A maid's daughter shared a secret friendship with a forgotten old man. Then a general and 5 officers arrived, and everything changed. For 2 months, it was their secret ritual. Emma, a maid's quiet daughter, brought a daily cookie to the hospital's most difficult patient. He was a grumpy old man, known only as Hank the Crank. Then, one afternoon, the ritual was broken. Emma arrived at room 214 to find the bed stripped. The patient was gone. As she stood in the empty room, the hospital fell silent. Heavy, polished boots echoed down the corridor. A general, his chest covered in medals, entered with 5 military officers. He wasn't there for the administrator. He was looking for Mr. Hank and the girl who brought him cookies. A 10-year-old girl learned that the smallest kindness can change an entire world. Emma Carter held the small, wax paper bag close, but the man she was bringing it to was gone. The scent of lemon polish and floor wax hung in the air, a smell as familiar to Emma as the scent of her own home. But today, something was wrong. She stood in the doorway of room 214. The bed was empty. It wasn't just empty, it was stripped. The thin, white blanket was gone. The sheets were gone. The lumpy pillow Mr. Hank always complained about was gone. A pale vinyl mattress was all that remained. It looked naked and sad. "Mr. Hank," she whispered. There was no answer. The gruff, coughing sound he always made when she first entered was missing. The room was silent. Emma's heart did a strange little flip. She stepped inside, her sneakers squeaking on the linoleum. The small oatmeal raisin cookie in the bag suddenly felt heavy. "Emma! What are you doing in there?" Emma jumped. Her mother, Mary Carter, stood at the door. She wore her light blue maid's uniform. Her hair was pulled back in a tight bun, and her face was etched with the familiar lines of a long day. She was holding a bundle of clean sheets, and she did not look happy. "I told you not to bother the patients," Mary scolded, though her voice was more tired than angry. "This room is on my list to be cleaned. That means the patient, well, it means we need to get it ready." "But where did he go?" Emma asked, her voice small. "Did he go home?" Mary's expression softened. She set the sheets down on the metal cart in the hallway. She knew how much Emma had liked the grumpy man in 214. "Honey, I don't think he went home. Mr. Porter was very old. He was very sick. Sometimes she didn't get to finish." A new sound echoed from the end of the long, tiled hallway. It was a sharp, hard sound. It was not the soft-souled sound of doctors or the squeak of a nurse's shoes. It was the sound of heavy, polished boots. Mary pulled Emma back into the doorway, her hand protectively on her daughter's shoulder. Mr. Henderson, the hospital administrator, appeared first. He was a small man who usually looked flustered. Today, he looked terrified. He was practically walking backward, wringing his hands. Behind him, 6 men entered the hallway. They moved as one. The man in the lead was tall and broad. He wore a dark green military uniform pressed so sharply it looked like it could cut glass. His chest was a rainbow of ribbons and medals. A shining silver star glinted on each shoulder. His face was like stone, with clear, sharp eyes that missed nothing. Behind him, 5 other officers followed in perfect, silent steps. They were all in full dress uniform. They made the pale green walls of the St. Jude's Veterans Hospital look faded and small. The hospital fell silent. A nurse pushing a medicine cart froze in place. An orderly stopped mopping. The men stopped directly in front of room 214. The tall man, the general, looked at Mr. Henderson. His voice was deep and clear, a command that filled the entire corridor. "You are the administrator?" "Yes, General Sinclair, sir," Mr. Henderson stammered. We're so honored. We were not expecting—" "I am not here for an honor," the general said, cutting him off. His gaze swept the area. He saw Mary in her uniform and Emma hiding behind her. "I am here for Mr. Henry Porter." "Mr. Porter passed away this morning, sir." Peacefully, Mr. Henderson said quickly. We've already moved him, that is, we've begun the process. The general's jaw tightened for a single second. He gave a short, sharp nod, as if accepting a report. I see. Then I am here to execute his final directives. I was his attorney. He looked past the administrator, his eyes landing on Emma. Mary felt her daughter's hand grip her uniform. She tried to pull Emma behind her, but the general had already seen her. I was told he had a visitor, General Sinclair said. A young girl, one who brought him cookies. Mr. Henderson looked confused. Sir? I have no record of... She's just the maid's daughter. She's not supposed to be... Is this her? The general demanded. His voice was not cruel, but it was absolute. He stepped forward, and Mary Carter, a woman who cleaned floors for a living, found herself standing face to face with a two-star general. His sharp blue eyes looked down at her 10-year-old blonde-haired daughter. Young lady, he said, his voice surprisingly gentle, but still carrying the weight of command. Are you the girl who visited Henry Porter? 2 months earlier, the St. Jude's Veterans Hospital was Emma's after-school prison. It wasn't a bad place. It wasn't a gleaming, modern hospital from television. It was an old brick building that smelled of bleach, chicken soup, and something vaguely metallic. It was a place of quiet, of long hallways, and of men who looked like faded photographs. For the past year, ever since her father had left, Mary Carter had worked double shifts. She cleaned rooms at St. Jude's from 7 a.m. to 3 p.m. Then, Emma would take the bus from school and meet her. From 3:15 until 6, Emma would do her homework in the second-floor supply closet. The closet was her sanctuary. It was small, cramped, and smelled of paper towels and harsh soap. But it was hers. She sat on an overturned bucket, using a stack of folded towels as a desk. Her mother, Mary, was a good woman and a hard worker. She believed in rules. Emma had 3. Be invisible. We are lucky Mr. Henderson lets you stay. Don't make him regret it. Do not touch anything. Do not, under any circumstances, bother the patients. Emma was good at following the rules. She was a quiet girl, with pale blonde hair and watchful eyes. She observed the world. She saw the head nurse, Nurse Jacobs, who always seemed angry. Nurse Jacobs had a permanent frown and always seemed to be scolding someone. This is a hospital, not a playground, she would snap if she saw Emma in the hallway. Then there was George, the orderly. George was a large, kind man who had a habit of whistling. He would often accidentally drop a small bag of chips or an apple near the supply closet door around 4 p.m. Floor's dirty, better get that before I sweep it up, he'd mutter, never looking at her. Emma's life was about being quiet, about not being a problem. Her mother worked so hard. Mary's hands were red and raw from the cleaning chemicals. At night, Emma would watch her mother fall asleep in her armchair, too tired to even walk to her own bed. Emma knew her mother was worried about money. The whispers on the phone late at night were always about bills, the rent, the car, the past due notices. Emma's family had a history of being strong. In their small apartment, there was one picture frame that was always kept clean. It showed a young man in a uniform from a long, long time ago. That's your great-grandfather, Mary had told her once. Elias Carter. He was a hero. He fought in the big war. Emma loved that picture. He looked brave. He looked like the men in the hallways at St. Jude's, only younger. Her great-grandfather was a legend. But legends didn't pay the rent. One Tuesday, the supply closet was unbearable. A new shipment of bleach had come in, and the fumes made Emma's eyes water. She peeked her head out. Nurse Jacobs was at the far end of the hall. George was nowhere to be seen. She slipped out just to get some fresh air. She walked down the hall, trying to be invisible, practicing the wallflower trick her mother had taught her. She passed room 210. A man who always watched game shows, the volume up high. She passed room 212. A man who had no visitors and just stared at the ceiling. And then she came to room 214. She had passed it before, but the door was always closed. Today, it was open just a crack, and she heard a sound, a low, angry-sounding growl. "It's slop," a voice barked. "Absolute slop. Take it away." A young nurse's aide backed out of the room, holding a tray. Her face was bright red. He didn't like the Jell-O," the aide whispered to another nurse. "Nobody likes the Jell-O," the other nurse replied. "But Mr. Porter doesn't have to be so mean about it." Emma looked at the tray. The green Jell-O cube was untouched. So was the chicken and the mashed potatoes. She peeked through the crack in the door. Inside, an old man was sitting up in bed. He was thin, with a shock of white hair that stuck up in every direction. His face was a map of deep wrinkles, and his eyes were a fierce, sharp blue. He looked like an angry eagle. He turned his head and saw her. Emma froze. "What do you want?" he snapped. His voice was like gravel. Emma's mind went blank. All her mother's rules flew out the window. I was just—" "This isn't a zoo," he growled. "Get out. Don't need kids staring at me. Go on, scat." Emma scat. She ran back to the supply closet, her heart hammering. That night, she told her mother what happened. "That's Mr. Porter," Mary sighed, rubbing her temples. "The nurses call him Hank the Crank. He's our most difficult patient. He yells at everyone. Don't go near that room again, Emma. I mean it." But Emma couldn't forget the tray, the untouched food. The next day, she took the bus to the hospital. In her backpack, she had her math book, her spelling list, and a small wax paper bag. Inside the bag were 2 oatmeal raisin cookies from her own lunch. Her mother always packed her one, but she had saved yesterday's. She went to her closet. She waited. At 3:30, she knew Nurse Jacobs was on her break. She slipped out of the closet. She walked down the hall. Her legs felt like jelly. She was breaking the biggest rule. She stopped at room 214. The door was open a crack, just like yesterday. She listened. She heard the low murmur of the television. She pushed the door open, just an inch more. Mr. Hank was in his chair, facing the window. His back was to her. He seemed to be asleep. She tiptoed in. The room smelled like old newspapers and rubbing alcohol. She held her breath. She reached his bedside table. It was covered in medicine cups and tissues. She quickly, quietly placed 1 oatmeal raisin cookie on a clean napkin. And she ran. She made it back to the supply closet, her heart pounding. She felt like a bank robber. She waited all afternoon, expecting her mother to show up, dragging her by the ear. She expected Nurse Jacobs to call security. Nothing happened. The next day, she was consumed by curiosity. She waited until 3:30 again. She went back to room 214. She peeked in. The cookie was gone. The napkin was still there, but the cookie was gone. A small thrill went through her. She crept into the room. Mr. Hank was in his bed, his eyes closed. She wasn't sure if he was asleep or pretending. She pulled the second cookie from her bag. She placed it on the napkin. As she turned to leave, his eyes snapped open. "You're the cookie ghost," he grumbled. Emma froze. She was caught. I'm sorry, sir." He stared at her. His blue eyes were piercing. "Oatmeal raisin. My wife liked oatmeal raisin. I'm a chocolate chip man." "Oh," Emma said, disappointed. "I'm sorry. I only have oatmeal." He reached a shaky, spotted hand toward the table. His fingers were swollen at the knuckles. He fumbled with the cookie, his fingers seeming stiff and clumsy. He finally got it to his mouth and took a bite. He chewed for a long time. Emma stood by the door, unsure if she should run or stay. "It's dry," he said. "My mom says you're not supposed to dunk them, but I think they're better if you dunk them in milk," Emma offered. "Milk is for calves," he muttered. But he took another bite. He ate the entire cookie. "Well," he said, brushing crumbs from his thin hospital gown, "don't just stand there." "You're letting a draft in?" It was a dismissal, but it wasn't scat. Emma nodded. Yes, sir. She left. It became their secret ritual. Every day at 3:30, Emma would bring him a cookie. Sometimes it was oatmeal. Sometimes, if her mother had extra baking money, it was a chocolate chip one she bought from the cafeteria. He never, ever said, thank you. Instead, he would complain. This one's too hard. This one's too soft. Do you know how much sugar is in this? It's poison. But he always ate it. He started talking to her. Not about himself, not about the war. He would ask her about school. What are they teaching you? You learning long division? Yes, sir. Waste of time. No one uses long division. You got a calculator? What about that Nurse Jacobs? He'd ask. She's a dragon, isn't she? She's just very strict, Emma would say. Humph. She's wound too tight. Needs a cookie. Emma learned things about him in little pieces. She learned he hated the color green. He liked baseball, but only the old games. And he hated being called Henry. Name's Hank, he told her. Only doctors and tax collectors call me Henry. One day, Nurse Jacobs almost caught her. Emma was just handing Hank the cookie when the nurse's shadow fell across the doorway. Miss Carter, Nurse Jacobs said, her voice sharp. Emma froze. Hank's hand, which had been reaching for the cookie, snapped back. Your mother is looking for you. You are not to be in this room. Patients are not a sideshow. Mr. Porter needs his rest. She's fine, Hank growled from the bed. She's not hurting anyone. Hospital policy, Mr. Porter. No unsupervised children. Now, Emma. Go. Emma looked at Hank. He looked at her. Then he looked away. Out the window. He looked small. Emma ran out, her face burning with shame. Her mother was waiting. Emma, what did I tell you? What did I tell you? Mary's voice was shaking. Nurse Jacobs went to Mr. Henderson. She said, I can't control my own child. She said you're a liability. Do you know what that means? It means I could lose this job. I'm sorry, Mama, Emma whispered. Tears pricked her eyes. He's hungry. He doesn't eat the food. That is not your problem, Mary said, her voice rising. Then she saw Emma's face, and her anger melted into pure exhaustion. She knelt and put her hands on Emma's shoulders. Baby, I know your heart is good. It's the best thing about you. But this world, it's not kind to people with good hearts. We can't afford trouble. We have to be invisible. Do you understand? Number. More. Cookies. The next day, 3:30 came and went. Emma stayed in her closet. She tried to do her math homework, but the numbers swam. She felt a heavy, cold feeling in her stomach. She pictured Mr. Hank staring at the door, waiting. She lasted 2 days. On the third day, she couldn't take it. She had her cookie. She crept out. She checked the hallway. It was clear. She ran to room 214. She slipped inside. Hank was in his chair, staring at the door. When he saw her, his whole face seemed to light up for a second, before the familiar scowl returned. You're late, he barked. I'm sorry, she said, handing him the cookie. My mom. I got in trouble. Yeah, well, trouble is part of life. He took the cookie. His hands were shaking more than usual. He tried to lift it, but his fingers fumbled. The cookie dropped onto his lap. He cursed, a low, angry sound. He tried to pick it up again, but his swollen knuckles wouldn't cooperate. He looked defeated. Without thinking, Emma stepped forward. She picked up the cookie. Here, she said gently. She held it up to his mouth. He stared at her. His fierce, blue eyes seemed to water. He looked away, embarrassed, but he leaned forward and took a small bite. They stayed like that for a minute. This 10-year-old girl and the 84-year-old man, as she patiently held his cookie for him. When he was done, he cleared his throat. He reached to his bedside table. He fumbled in the drawer and pulled something out. He pressed it into her hand. It was a coin. It was heavy, and not like a quarter. It had a fancy design on it. Found this, he grumbled. Don't need it. Go on, take it. Uh, a trade for the cookies. Emma looked at it. It was beautiful. Thank you, Mr. Hank. Don't thank me. It's just a piece of junk. He turned to the window, and she knew she was dismissed. That was yesterday. And today, Emma sat on the soft leather seat, her legs too short to touch the floor. She stared at the back of the driver's head. He wore a black suit and never said a word. Her mother sat beside her, stiff as a board. Mary was nervously picking at a loose thread on her uniform. She had tried to go home and change, but General Sinclair had been polite but firm. There isn't time, Mrs. Carter. We can arrange for your things later. General Sinclair sat in the seat opposite them. He was not unkind, but he was all business. He had not spoken since they got in the car. The other 5 officers were in 2 other black cars, one in front of them and one behind. It felt like they were in a parade, but a secret, scary one. Where are we going? Mary finally asked, her voice trembling. If this is about a bill, I promise, Mr. Porter never wanted for anything but we. Mrs. Carter, the general said, his voice calm and low. This is not about a bill. Please, relax. Henry. Mr. Porter was a very specific man. He made very specific, and some might say unusual, final arrangements. He looked at Emma. He told me about you, you know. Emma looked up, surprised. He did? He did. A very small smile touched the general's lips. He called you the quartermaster. The cookie ghost, Emma whispered. Yes, that too. He said you were the only person in that entire hospital who wasn't afraid of him. He was just sad, Emma said, and his hands hurt. The general's eyes widened just for a second. He looked at Mary. Ma'am, your daughter is very observant. The car slowed. They were in a part of the city Emma had never seen. The buildings were tall and made of glass. The car pulled into a private garage beneath one of the tallest. The general led them to a private elevator. It went up, fast and silent. The doors opened into an office. But it wasn't an office. It was a room so large it looked like a hotel lobby. It was all dark wood, thick carpets, and leather-bound books. A massive window looked out over the entire city. Please sit, the general said, gesturing to 2 small, antique-looking chairs. Mary and Emma sat. They looked tiny in the enormous room. General Sinclair, Mary said, please. I'm a simple person. This is a lot. What is this all about? The general stood by his massive desk. Mary, may I call you Mary? My name is Robert. I was Hank's attorney, yes. But I was also his friend. I was his... well, I was his last link to his old life. He took a deep breath. Henry Porter was not a poor man. He was not just some forgotten soldier. He was, in fact, one of the wealthiest men in this country. He built an empire in shipping and logistics after he came home from the war. Mary's jaw dropped. But he was in St. Jude's, in a normal room. He wore the paper-thin gown. He hated his family, the general said, the words blunt and cold. He had a son who gave him 2 grandchildren. They are disappointments. They saw him as a walking bank account. They wanted his money, but they didn't want him. They hadn't visited him in 5 years. So, 2 years ago, Hank did something dramatic. He liquidated his assets. He put everything into a private trust. He gave his family exactly what his son's prenuptial agreement required. A large sum, but a fraction of the total. And then, he vanished. He checked himself into St. Jude's, under his own name, but with no financial history attached. He wanted to see what the world was like with no money. He wanted to die as he was born, just a man. He was, the general said, his voice thick with emotion, testing the world. He was looking for one person, just one, who would be kind to him with no expectation of reward. He looked at Emma. And then you, little quartermaster, you brought him a cookie. The general opened a thick, leather-bound folder on his desk. Hank was a soldier. He didn't believe in long, flowery wills. He wrote what he called after-action orders. They are simple, and they are ironclad. He pulled out a single sheet of paper. He left his family nothing more. He left me this desk and a request to keep an eye on things. And then he looked at Mary. There is the final provision. To Mary Carter, who is raising a child with a good heart, I leave the sum of $500,000 to ensure she never has to be invisible again. Mary Carter made a sound, a small gasp, like she had been punched. She put her hand to her mouth. Sir, I can't. It is yours, Mary. He was very clear. And to Emma Carter, the general continued, his voice softer, the quartermaster. The only one brave enough to face Hank the Crank. He left you his junk. He opened a drawer and pulled out a large, heavy, dark green metal box, a footlocker. It was old. He also left you the contents of the trust. A sum of, it's a very large number. More money than you or your mother will ever need. It is all yours, to be managed by myself and Mrs. Carter until you are of age. Emma wasn't listening to the part about the money. She was looking at the box. The general placed it on the floor. This, he said, was the real inheritance. Emma slid off the chair. She knelt on the thick carpet. On the side of the box, in faded white paint, was a name. She touched the letters. E. Carter. But that's my name, Emma said. Not your name, Emma, Mary whispered, her eyes full of tears. She was staring at the box as if she'd seen a ghost. That was your great-grandfather's. That was Elias Carter's footlocker? The general looked at Emma. Mr. Hank knew your great-grandfather. They served in the same company. Elias, he saved Hank's life, took a bullet that was meant for him. Hank was the one who held him. He tried to find his family for years, but Elias was an orphan. He never knew he had a family line. But he knew you, General Sinclair said to Emma. The moment he saw you, he said he knew. You have his eyes. Emma looked at the box. She looked at her mother, who was crying quiet tears of relief and understanding. She looked at the general, who was smiling. He wasn't just testing the world, Emma said, finally understanding. He was waiting. He was waiting for my mom to get a job there. He was waiting for me. He said to tell you one thing, the general said. He pulled a small folded napkin from his pocket. Emma took it. On it, in a shaky, difficult handwriting, was one word: thank you. Mary Carter's hand was pressed so tightly against her mouth that her fingers were white. Her body was trembling, a fine, low vibration. The number the general had said, $500,000, was not processing. It was a lottery number. It was a number for television. It was not a number for her, Mary Carter, a woman who measured her life in bleach bottles and bus fares. I don't understand, Mary whispered, her voice muffled by her hand. Sir, that's a mistake. I can't accept that. I didn't do anything. You did, General Sinclair said, his voice firm but kind. He did not sit. He remained standing, a pillar of strength. You did your job with dignity. You raised a daughter who has a good heart. Hank valued that more than anything. He saw you, Mary. He knew you were invisible to everyone else, and it made him angry. Emma wasn't looking at her mother. She wasn't thinking about the impossible numbers. Her eyes were fixed on the dark green metal box on the floor. E. Carter. She traced the stenciled letters. It was a name, but it felt like a mirror. My great-grandfather, she said, her voice full of wonder. He knew him. They were more than friends, the general said. He crouched down, a movement surprisingly graceful for such a large man. He tapped the heavy latch on the footlocker. May I? Emma nodded. The general worked the latch. It was stiff, but it finally sprang open with a loud clack. A smell wafted out. It was the smell of old canvas, old metal, and something faint and dry, like old paper. Mary moved closer, her own shock momentarily forgotten, her curiosity pulling her in. Inside, things were packed with military neatness. On top was a thick wool blanket. It was dark green. Emma touched it. It was rough, not soft. Beneath it, a small dark blue velvet box. General Sinclair lifted it out. "Hank told me about this." He opened it. Inside, on a bed of faded white satin, was a medal. It was a star, hanging from a blue ribbon. "The Medal of Honor," the general said, his voice heavy with respect. "It was Elias's. He was awarded it, after he died, for the action that saved Hank's life. Hank kept it for him. He said he was just holding it until he found his family." He handed the box to Emma. It was heavy. "My great-grandfather was a hero," Emma whispered. The story she had heard her whole life was not just a story. It was real. "The very definition of one," Sinclair agreed. Mary was crying, but this time, the tears were not for herself. They were for a man she had never met, a man whose picture hung on her wall. Beneath where the medal had been, there were 2 items left. The first was a small leather-bound book. It was worn at the edges, its cover soft with age. The second was a small, heavy, brass-colored coin. Emma picked it up. It had an eagle on one side and some kind of emblem on the other. "Mr. Hank gave me one," Emma said, her hand flying to her pocket. She pulled out the coin he had given her in the hospital. It was not the same, but it was similar. "He said it was junk." "That," the general said, a small smile touching his lips, "is a division challenge coin. It's not junk. Soldiers carry them. They're a symbol. They prove you were part of the unit. You show that coin in a room of old soldiers, and you are family." He gave you his. He pointed to the one in the box. "That one was Elias's. Now you have both." Emma held one in each hand. They felt important. Finally, she picked up the leather-bound book, a journal. She opened the cover. The first page was written in beautiful, old-fashioned cursive. September 4th, 1944. Still raining. I hope we move out soon. I have a feeling this is it. Emma closed it quickly. It felt too private, like reading someone's mail. "This is," Mary started. "This is all just so much." "It is," the general said, "and Hank knew it would be, which is why he appointed me to help you, to guard you." "Guard us?" "From what?" Mary asked. The question was answered by a sharp, angry buzz from the intercom on the general's desk. Sinclair stood up, his face hardening. He pressed the button. "Yes, Diane?" "General Sinclair, I am so sorry." His secretary's voice crackled. "Mr. Porter Jr. is here, and Miss Brenda, and their attorney. They're not listening. They're coming in." "It's all right, Diane," the general said, his voice dropping an octave back into the sound of command. He let go of the button and looked at Mary. "From them." The grand wooden doors of the office burst open. A man in his late 60s, with a soft pink face and a very expensive-looking but poorly fitted suit, strode in. He looked like Hank, but all the hard edges had been sanded off, leaving just a pout. This was Henry Hank Porter Jr. Behind him was a woman in her 30s. She was tall, thin, and wore a black dress that looked like it cost more than Mary's car. Her hair was pulled back so tightly it seemed to hurt. Her eyes, unlike her father's, were sharp and cold. This was Brenda Porter, the granddaughter. And behind them, holding a briefcase, was a man who looked like a hawk. He wore a pinstripe suit and a permanent sneer. "Sinclair!" Junior puffed, his face red. "What is the meaning of this?" "We were at the club. We had to hear from a service that my father had passed. You didn't even call us." Brenda's cold eyes swept the room. She ignored her father's complaint. She saw Mary in her blue maid's uniform, and Emma, a small girl on the floor next to an open footlocker. Her eyes narrowed. "General," Brenda said, her voice like ice, "why is the help here? And why are they touching my grandfather's things?" Mary stood up, her hands twisting in the fabric of her uniform. She automatically tried to move behind the general, to become invisible. The general did not move. He seemed to grow larger. "Mr. Porter, Miss Porter, Mr. Graves," he said, nodding to the lawyer. "Your father and grandfather's passing was this morning. My first duty was to execute his final directives." "His directive?" Brenda snapped. "His directive was to call his family. His only family." "On the contrary," the general said, his voice flat. "His explicit directive was to ensure you were not the first to be called. He did not want you at the hospital." Junior looked like he'd been slapped. "He was senile." "He must have been. I'm his son. His son." "That is a matter of opinion," the general said. "It's a matter of fact." The hawk-faced lawyer, Graves, spoke up. He stepped forward. "General Sinclair, we have just been informed of the will's primary provisions. This is a farce. A man in a charity hospital disinheriting his own blood? It screams mental incompetence. It reeks of undue influence." He stared with open contempt at Mary. "We are here to inform you that we are contesting. We will be freezing all assets, pending a full mental evaluation of the deceased, and we will be deposing everyone involved." The threat was clear. It was aimed directly at Mary. "I didn't," Mary began, her voice a small squeak. My daughter." "Your daughter," Brenda said, stepping forward. Her eyes were full of venom. "Yes, let's talk about her. How very convenient. My grandfather, a billionaire, suddenly befriends a maid's child. How much did you pay her to cry at his bedside? How many cookies did you force-feed that old man?" "I didn't," Emma cried out. She was on her feet now. The medal was still in her hand. "He was my friend." He hated the Jell-O. "Be quiet, child," Junior snapped, waving his hand. "This is grown-up business." "You be quiet?" Emma shouted. The sudden force of her voice shocked everyone. Even the general looked at her with new respect. Emma was not a lawyer, she was not rich, but she was 10, and her moral compass was simple. These people were bad. They were the bullies. "You're the disappointments," she said, her voice ringing in the silent, expensive office. Junior's mouth fell open. Brenda's face turned from cold to white-hot rage. "He said so," Emma went on, pointing a finger at them. "He said you only wanted his money. He said you never visited. He was right. You didn't. I was there. He was all alone. He was just sad. And his hands hurt. But you didn't know that. You weren't there." She stood her ground, a small girl in a simple dress, holding a Medal of Honor in one hand and a challenge coin in the other. Brenda looked at Emma, then at the footlocker. She saw the journal. She saw the medal. And a new, terrifying look of calculation entered her eyes. "So," she said to Graves, "this is their play. They've invented a long-lost army buddy connection. How touching. How pathetic." "Elias Carter was not pathetic," the general said, his voice suddenly a low growl. "He was a hero. A man your family will never be fit to stand beside." "We'll see about that," Graves sneered. "A court will find this all very suspicious. A 10-year-old girl inherits a billion-dollar trust? I think not. We'll have this child on a stand. We'll have her mother's life examined. Every dollar she's ever earned. Every bill she's ever been late on. By the time we are done, they will wish they had never heard the name Henry Porter." Mary was pale. She looked like she was going to be sick. This was her worst nightmare. This was the trouble she had spent her life trying to avoid. "General," she whispered, "please, give them the money. I don't want it. I don't want any of this. I just want to take my daughter and go home." "No," Emma said. She walked over and took her mother's hand. "No, Mama. Mr. Hank wanted us to have it. He was trading us for the cookies." Brenda let out a laugh. It was a sharp, ugly sound. "$1 billion for cookies. This is better than I thought. We'll have her declared simple-minded. This is a slam dunk." "That will be enough," General Sinclair roared. The command in his voice was absolute. It was the voice of a man who had sent men into battle. The porters and their lawyer fell silent. "Mr. Graves, you will file your motions, and I will file my responses. But you will not threaten my clients. You will not threaten a 10-year-old child in my office." He pointed to Mary and Emma. "These two people are the primary beneficiaries of Henry Porter's estate. As such, they are my sole focus. Hank, my client, was aware you would do this. He was not a foolish man. He was, in fact, prepared." He looked at the leather journal in Emma's hand. "That journal?" Brenda scoffed. "A dead man's diary from 1944? It's meaningless." "You are mistaken," the general said. "Hank was a meticulous man. He knew a contest was coming. He knew you would claim he was senile. He knew you would claim undue influence. So he prepared a defense." He looked at Emma. "Emma, look at the journal again. The other one." Emma looked confused. "There's just... Oh." Tucked inside the leather cover of the old journal was another book. A simple, spiral-bound, cheap notebook, the kind Emma used for school. She pulled it out. "That," the general said, "is Hank's journal. The one he was writing in St. Jude's." He looked at Brenda. "It's his own deposition. A daily record. He wrote down every single day he was in that hospital. What he ate, which nurse was on duty, what he watched on television, and, most importantly, who visited him." The general walked to his desk. "He had it notarized. Every single week. By a private notary I sent in. It's a legal document. A 2-year-long record of his sound mind and of your absolute, total abandonment. That is the arsenal, as he called it. That is what we will present in court." Brenda Porter's face was a mask of hate. She had no response. "Now," the general said, "this meeting is over. Security will show you out." The drive from the general's office was silent. Mary and Emma sat in the back of the black town car. Mary was still shaking. Emma was holding the footlocker on her lap. "I'm sorry, Mama," Emma said. "Sorry? For what, baby?" "For getting us in trouble. For the money." Mary looked at her daughter. She saw the Medal of Honor. She saw the challenge coins. She saw the journals. And she felt a new strength, a strength she didn't know she had. It was the strength Elias Carter must have had. It was the strength Hank had. "Don't you be sorry," Mary said. She took her daughter's hand. "You did nothing wrong. You were kind. And those people are angry because they don't know how to be kind." The car was not going to their apartment. Mary knew the way. This was a different direction. "General, where are we going?" she asked. "One last thing," the general said from the front seat. "Hank's final provision. He knew they would try to find you. He knew your apartment was not safe. He wanted you to be secure." The car turned onto a quiet, tree-lined street. The houses were not mansions. They were simple, brick-and-wood, single-family homes, the kind with small, neat lawns and flower beds. The car pulled into the driveway of a small, clean, white house. It had a bright blue door and a small porch. "This," the general said, "is your new home. It's paid for. The utilities are on. The pantry is stocked. Hank owned this property for 30 years. He said it was his quiet place. He left it to you. He wanted you to be safe while the war commenced." Mary looked at the house. It was the first home she had ever owned. She began to cry, but this time it was a different kind of tears. It was the tears of a dam breaking, a dam of fear, of rent payments, of late notices, of being invisible. It all washed away. That night, Emma sat on the floor of her new room. It was bigger than her old room. It smelled like fresh paint. She put the footlocker at the end of her bed. She opened the spiral notebook, Hank's journal. She read the first entry. The handwriting was shaky, but angry. August 14th. The new place is as bad as I'd hoped. The jello is a crime against humanity. The walls are pale green. I hate green. No one has visited. Good. She turned the page. August 15th, still no one. The son, Junior, has not called. Brenda has not called. They don't know I'm here. They just know the money is gone. That's all it took. 2 days. Good. She skipped ahead, pages and pages of the same thing. No one, no one, no one. Then she found a new entry, 2 months ago, October 12th. A ghost came. A small blonde girl. She stared at me. I told her to scat. She scatted. The next day, October 13th, the ghost came back. She left a cookie, oatmeal raisin, dry, but it was something. Emma smiled. She kept reading. She had her friend's voice back, and she knew, holding that book, that they were going to be okay. The weeks that followed were quiet, but not peaceful. They were the silence of a held breath. General Sinclair had moved Mary and Emma into the small white house with the blue door. It was a fortress. Hank had owned it for 30 years, a quiet place, and he had left it to them for their safety. While Mary learned to navigate a new life, one without a time clock, but full of words like deposition and fiduciary, Emma found a new sanctuary. She spent her afternoons in her new room, the green footlocker at the end of her bed. She was not reading about the money. She was reading about the past. Elias Carter's leather-bound journal was not a history book. It was a diary, written in pencil. He wrote about his feet being wet. He wrote about a bad hand of poker. And he wrote about Hank. October 2nd, 1944. Porter got a package from home. Real chocolate. He split it with me and the other two. I told him he was a fool. He should have kept it. He said a man's got to eat, but a man's got to have friends too. He's gruff, but he's a good man. Emma closed the book. She finally understood. Mr. Hank hadn't just been testing the world. He had been looking for Elias. He had been looking for a friend. He's trying to paint you as a schemer, General Sinclair explained one evening at the small kitchen table. The house smelled like cinnamon. Mary had started baking to keep her hands busy. But I don't know how to scheme, Mary said, her hands twisting a dish towel. I'm a maid. To Mr. Graves, you are a threat, the general said. He has scheduled your depositions for next week, both of you. He will try to scare you. He will try to make you contradict yourself. He will try to prove you took advantage of a sick old man. But we didn't, Emma said from the floor, not looking up from the journal. Mr. Hank used my cookies to find a friend. The general smiled. That, quartermaster, is exactly what you should say. The deposition room was cold and dark. Mr. Graves, the hawk, sat at one end of a long, polished table. A stenographer sat beside him. Brenda and Junior were there, sitting against the wall like a bitter audience. Mary sat opposite Graves, with General Sinclair at her side. Her hands were trembling. Mrs. Carter, Graves began, his voice slick. Let's be clear. You worked as a maid. Did you make a habit of fraternizing with the patients? I would say hello. Just hello? Graves smiled. Or did you seek out wealthy patients? Objection, Sinclair said, his voice a low rumble. The patient's financial status was not public knowledge. Noted, Graves sneered. Mrs. Carter, when did you first discover Mr. Porter was wealthy? In your office, Mary said, her voice small. After he was gone. I just thought he was a sad old man. A sad old man, Graves repeated, whom you instructed your daughter to visit. A 10-year-old girl? No! I told her not to. It was against the rules. Ah! Graves slapped the table. Mary jumped. So she was defying the rules. How convenient. The daughter sneaks in to see the lonely billionaire. Did you practice this story, Mrs. Carter? It's not a story. It's the truth. The truth, Graves scoffed. The truth is, you were drowning in debt. Did you find out about his son, his granddaughter? Did you realize how disappointed he was in them? Did you see your opening? No, I was just cleaning. Yes, you were. Graves looked at her with contempt. We're done. Send in the child. Mary felt sick, but the general put a hand on her arm. You did fine, Mary. You told the truth. Emma came in. She was not afraid. She sat in the big chair, her feet not touching the floor. Hello, Emma, Graves said, his voice suddenly thick and sweet. My name is Mr. Graves. I'm just here to ask about your friend, Mr. Hank. Emma nodded. You brought him cookies. Did your mommy tell you to bring them? No, sir. She told me not to. She was scared of Nurse Jacobs. Graves's smile faltered. Oh, but you did it anyway. Why? Because he was hungry, Emma said, as if it were the most obvious thing in the world. He said the jello was slop, so I brought him a cookie. And did he promise you things? Graves leaned in. Did he promise you money? A new house? Emma looked at him, confused. No, why would he do that? He's not a bank. He was just Mr. Hank. But he gave you a coin, Graves pounced. A heavy gold-looking coin. It's not gold, Emma said. It's a challenge coin. He traded it to me for the cookies. He traded you. Graves looked at the stenographer. So you made a deal. You gave him cookies. He gave you… What? A promise? Objection, Sinclair said. He's twisting the child's words. I'm just trying to understand this trade. He said… Emma's voice was clear and steady. He said I was the quartermaster. And he said he found his family. His family? Graves looked at Brenda and Junior. You mean them? No, Emma said. She pointed at herself. Me. He said I was a Carter. Like my great-grandpa. He said we were better than you. You! Junior shouted from the back wall, his face purple. Quiet, Graves ordered. His fake smile was gone. The old man was senile. He was confused. He was babbling about wars and ghosts. No, he wasn't, Emma said. He was just mad. Because you were disappointments. And he was waiting for us. This is a farce. Graves threw his pen down. General, this is absurd. The man was clearly not of sound mind. He was hallucinating. He thought this child was some long-lost relative. We will see you in court. Brenda was smiling. She thought they had won. General Sinclair stood up. He buttoned his suit jacket. Mr. Graves, he said, you are correct. We will see you in court, but you are basing your entire case on the idea that Henry Porter was senile. They clearly were, Graves said. My client, Hank, knew you would say that. The general reached into his briefcase. He pulled out not a document, but a small silver digital video recorder. Hank was a logistician, Mr. Graves. He believed in documentation. Brenda's smile vanished. What is that? Graves asked. It is a statement of testamentary capacity. A video will, so to speak. Hank was many things, but he was not stupid. He knew his family, he knew you, and he wanted to have the last word. The general pressed play. The small screen flickered to life. It was Hank. He was in his bed, room 214. He was in the thin paper gown. He looked tired, but his eyes were fierce, blue, and sharp as glass. My name is Henry Hank Porter, he barked, his voice the familiar growl. It is October 28th. I am in full command of my faculties. My mind is clear. He coughed. To my son, Junior, and my granddaughter, Brenda. If you are watching this, it means you are contesting my will. It means I am dead. And it means you are proving my point, you greedy, lazy disappointments. Junior made a small, strangled sound. I am of sound mind, Hank continued. I am not being unduly influenced by anyone. I am making a choice. I have spent the last 2 years testing the world, and the world failed. Until the quartermaster showed up. He looked away from the camera as if someone was in the room. He smiled. A real, actual smile. "No," he said, "I'm not a chocolate chip man. I just said that to make you come back." He looked back at the camera, his face hard again. "The money is mine. The legacy is mine. I am giving the money to Mary Carter, who deserved a better life. I am giving the trust to Emma Carter, who is the only person to show me kindness in a decade. She is a Carter. She is Elias's blood. And she is better than all of you." The video clicked off. The room was silent. Mr. Graves was pale. His entire case, his entire argument of senility, had just been blown apart by Hank Porter himself. Brenda stood up. Her face was a mask of pure, cold hatred. She walked out of the room. Junior stumbled after her. Mr. Graves began, very slowly, to pack his briefcase. "General," he said, his voice a dry croak, We may be open to a settlement." "No," the general said. "We will not. We will see you in court. We will honor Mr. Porter's final wish, which is to see you get exactly what he left you. Nothing." The new wing of the St. Jude's Veterans Hospital was dedicated 6 months later. It was not called the Porter Wing. It was called the Carter-Porter Friendship Wing. The walls were no longer a faded, sick green. They were a warm, bright yellow. The jello was gone, replaced by a real chef. The nurses, including Nurse Jacobs, had new equipment and a scholarship fund for their children. Mary Carter stood at the podium. She wore a simple blue dress. She was on the board of directors. She was nervous, but she did not tremble. "My name is Mary Carter," she said. "I used to work here. My job was to clean these floors. My job was to be invisible." She looked at the crowd. She saw George, the orderly, smiling. She saw General Sinclair standing tall. "A man I knew," she continued. "A man named Hank. He saw me. He saw my daughter. He taught us that kindness is not a weakness. This wing is not about money. It is about a trade, a cookie for a friendship. Today, we open this wing to honor him and to honor every veteran here, to let you know, we see you." Later, Emma sat in what used to be room 214. It was not a patient room anymore. It was a library, filled with comfortable chairs and good books. The green footlocker, Elias Carter's, was in the corner, a permanent part of the room. She was reading from the old leather journal, and George, the orderly, was sitting across from her. "Listen to this one, George," she said. "October 10th, 1944. My feet are soaked, but Porter, Hank, he found a dry pair of socks for me. He just showed up with them. He said, 'Don't get emotional. He's a good man.'" George smiled. "He sounds like a crank." "He was," Emma smiled back. "But he was our crank." She looked at the wall, where a new, small brass plaque was placed. It didn't mention money or billionaires. It just said, "In memory of Hank and Elias, friends." And that's where we'll end the story of Emma, her mother, and Hank the Crank. I hope it gave you a chance to step out of the everyday and just drift for a bit, reminding us all how a simple act of kindness, like a single cookie, can change a life. I'd love to know what you were doing while listening, maybe taking a break from work or just settling in for a calm evening. Drop a line in the comments. I really do read them all. What was your favorite part? And if you want to make sure we cross paths again, hitting like and subscribing makes a huge difference. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.